get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
Well, howdy do, Kneecaps Nation. You are locked and loaded for another episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast on another Detroit Lions winner. Vince Progar, happy to be joined, as always, by the Lions loyal season ticket holder, Phil Byrne. And Phil, another record-setting performance by our Lions. And it seems like when we looked at this game a week ago, knowing you have the 2-7 at the time Jacksonville Jaguars on the schedule, that it had to be a get-right game of sorts. Boy, did the Lions sure rise to the occasion in another beatdown. Probably, I would say, their third dump trucking of the season over an NFL opponent. This one 52-6 over Jacksonville.
There's a get-right game, and then there's get a little bit better game. I don't know what's better than this, but this was a team, and we've been back by the time we were able to watch this one or record our show here several hours after, and was rewatching the game on DVR, and safe to assume, I felt pretty confident that when the Lions scored that second touchdown to go up 14-3. Collectively, that was the game. They put it away. They put it away then and there. 3 minutes into the second quarter. That is the confidence level that I had with this team. That they were able to go ahead and get this done. And then from there, they really just kind of turned it on. Jared Goff, a absolutely phenomenal, perfect quarterback rating, 158.3. You want to talk about bounce back? I think, I didn't get the full pulse, but, a 14-point spread is pretty indicative that even Vegas thinks that, it's going to be a blowout of sorts. That was certainly the case. Jared Goff gets back on track. And what a easy and resounding win over a team like the Jaguars that, maybe by the time you're listening to this, they've already made the move. And Doug Peterson is out. Their GM, Brass, is out. Again, when you draft well, you got good coaches, you can kind of build around that a little bit. And it's bad because I feel like there was a certain point in time when we were picking 2 and they were picking 1 that the teams potentially could have been heading in the right direction. They had the playoff success before we did. But since then, man, we've gone in opposite directions.
It almost makes you wonder what went wrong, because remember when the Jaguars, it took them that historic comeback to knock off the Chargers in the playoffs a couple of years back in the first year under Doug Peterson, who has a Super Bowl victory to his credit as a head coach. Yeah. And it seems like after that moment, everything just kind of took a hard left, and the Lions have been progressing in the right direction. And that's what you want to see. And you brought up a moment ago, Phil, the Vegas line. So the Lions opened up, or actually at kickoff, I believe they were a 14.5-point favorite. I think they opened up at 13.5, and at kickoff it was out to 14.5. The Lions, in their last 57 games, are 41-16 against the spread. So not only are they going out and beating teams, more often than not, they're going out there and kicking them where it hurts.
Without a doubt. And, it's really the strength of knowing with this team, obviously it was bounce back day for Goff today, and it was phenomenal. Over 400 yards passing, which, he's done it in all these different combinations this year. He's had a couple of games where, he didn't eclipse 200 yards, barely eclipsed 200 yards. Now he has the 400-yard game. And we'll get into some game balls and things like that we'll kind of hand out here in a little bit. But just knowing when you get the Lions first and goal, they have 2 guys and they have all the other weapons from the receivers that they're going to go ahead and hit you with. And you know what? If it's still 4th and 1, or fourth, I should say fourth and goal, and they're at the 1 or 2, they're probably still going to go for it. That is ultimately what this team is all about. It is ultimately touchdowns and not the field goals. Even though we love Jake Bates and everything that he did the week before, that when you're able to put a team away because you're getting really, really good drives together early on in the game, and they know they can't stop you when you are inside the 5, game's over. And game's over pretty early for Jacksonville today.
The sustainability of drives, to me, Phil, is what was the most important part of this game. And CBS showed a really nice graphic of what the Lions were doing when they had the football. And I think their shortest drive of the game was 53 yards. And everything after that, you're looking at drives in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. So it's not like they were getting set up with short fields all day long. They were forcing the Jaguars to punt. And I would say the MVP of the day for Jacksonville was the punter because he at least did his part to try and flip field position. The problem is that there was a buzzsaw over lined up on the other side, and you could have given the ball at the 5-yard line every drive, and I don't think it would have mattered. That team was on a mission to prove that whatever happened in Houston to that offense is ancient history at this point. And I think it was a 60-minute football game. Granted, I think a lot of it will get lost in the sauce of, oh, well, Jacksonville's 2-8. They're probably going to fire their head coach and they're going to do a whole system change and da-da-da-da-da. But it's the NFL. You play who you're scheduled to play on that day. And I think what you got, Phil, was 60 minutes of Detroit Lions football, just how it is written up, just as it is discussed in practice and in training camp and all throughout the offseason. This has to make everybody from the top down feel like, hey, this is what we are capable of, regardless of who's lining up on the other side. This is what we know we can do.
Without a doubt. And this is really one of those games that everything was executing. Absolutely everything was executing. There were I think the one little pitch play where they tried to get Amon-Ra to pitch it to Jamo. Hey, you know what? That didn't connect for a large play. Outside of that, though, just about everything else
picked up a first down. It was worth it. It picked up a first down.
Picked up a first down. Everything was really clicking. Obviously, we've made it this far. I do want to obviously address the Alex Anzalone injury. I didn't get all the information live in real time since I was at the game. So maybe they addressed a little bit more. I know it's been discussed. It's like a forearm injury.
Fractured forearm. He's going to be looking at a 6 to 8 week recovery time. Should see him back in time for the playoffs, but that's still going to be a big time blow to this defense that seems to have been pushed to the brink at this point, and yet still is able to come up with from a points allowed standpoint, another solid performance given how many guys they've had ruled out for the rest of this regular season.
And really, the time that he left, I think you could pretty much trot in the second team defense and still coast, pretty easily to a victory in this one. So, it wasn't a major impact on the overall win loss on this game, but I think more is going to be asked from Jack Campbell, obviously. Malcolm Rodriguez, now that he is back, he had a pretty solid game, playing a little bit more. And then, whatever kind of combination they want to do with like Neiman and Nowasaki a little bit in there as well. Maybe we'll get Ukwu playing a little bit as well. They're going to have to figure something out because obviously now we are past the trade deadline. So anyone else we're bringing in is going to have to be off waivers. And I'm never always 100% sure with how waivers works, but because the Lions now, because the Bills defeated the Chiefs, are basically at the best record in the NFL. I would virtually guess that if it's based on win-loss record, they will be picking near the end of the waiver wire. But But hey, you know what? There's worse things to have, but that is the one down note to this game that I did see. Just obviously the Alex Anzalone injury.
Yep, nothing in life is free. There's always going to be a cost somewhere in the equation, and this was the cost of doing business on this day for the Lions losing Anzalone. And we'll get to more of how that will be impactful to this ball club as we look ahead to their upcoming game, because I do think that his lack of presence will definitely be noticed in the next game up. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's stick a little bit more with this game as a whole, Phil. As we wrap up our first bites here, let's hand out some game balls from the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think you have to, after what he went through a week ago in Houston, 5 interceptions. Not all of them were his fault, but definitely a game where he kind of regressed towards the mean a little bit, did just enough in the final quarter and a half to clinch it for his team. But what a bounce back effort from Jared Goff, a career high with the Lions, 412 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no mistakes, didn't even get sacked. And once again, Phil, back on board throwing for fewer incomplete passes than the
Yeah.
Lions had touchdowns. Jared Goff, got to give him a game ball.
Hey, and I think that's very sound response right there. I think that is a great one as well. I'm going to go the other side of the ball. Not so much from a stat standpoint, but I think an impact standpoint. And I am going to go with Kirby Joseph. Every single game is going by, and I'm expecting either him or Brian Branch is going to come up with a pick. Those two are an absolute dynamic duo back there, both playing center field. And, I did say the game was essentially over once we got that second touchdown score. The nail in the coffin, in my opinion, was that interception that he just, again, came out of nowhere on, got his feet in bound, picked the ball off, and again took what was probably the Jags' best drive or best opportunity
Yep, because
to
they were
go ahead
deep
and
in
try to.
Lions territory at that point.
They were to go get a touchdown right off the board. Again, you talk about the Jags' deficiencies from a talent standpoint. Obviously, not having Trevor Lawrence, not having this guy, not having that guy. Holding an NFL team to 6 points, still incredible feat. And I think some of that does have to get rewarded on the defensive side of the ball as well. So I am going to go Mr. Kirby Joseph.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I always have 2 game balls to give out, and Kirby Joseph was the second one. I am equally as impressed by some of the hard hits that I saw in the
Yeah.
game against the
Yeah.
Jaguars. That Brian Branch hit early in the game kind of set the tone. Kirby Joseph with one of his own. How about Amik Robertson, all 5'8" of them, going in there and just blowing up a receiver?
Evan
And
Ingram, the tight end. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And Evan Ingram's no little guy himself,
No.
being a tight end. So it's what the defense knows they can do. They're a hard hitting, gritty unit, and I think once again we saw they are starting to come alive a little bit. And I know that the defense has been kind of a convenient punching bag that a lot of fans have leaned on when things don't go so great, or even when they're getting wins, but they're not looking pretty. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like Aaron Glenn and the defense is kind of that first thing that people start pointing fingers at. And I think, Phil, this is one of the more underrated sound units in all of the NFL. The offense rightfully deserves every ounce of praise they get, but I don't think people fully appreciate what we've seen defensively by this Lions team.
Yeah, and I think some of this is going to go to Aaron Glenn because, you could say what you will about the front seven, and we'll see how we kind of adjust not having Anzalone. Obviously, getting Zadarius Smith in was awesome, but um, I think Aaron Glenn is finally comfortable with the group that he has back in the secondary, the 4 starters that he can roll in every single week and know that every single one of those guys not only is a great defender, and I know Terry and Arnold, pass interference, that's not what I'm getting at here. but they all can absolutely deliver the lumber. They are big hitters. They're not afraid to go into the box. If you need to do it on a blitz, you need to stop, go, pick up a tight end, across the middle. They're all capable of doing that. And that is really impressive. Sometimes you will get that from safeties, but you don't always get that from corners. And Terry Arnold and Carlton Davis as well, they've been able to do that. And then, of course, you throw in Robertson in the slot, and that's great. And what's so cool about all this, I would say, outside of receiver, this is probably the deepest unit that we have now on the team. Because some guy like Ennis Rakestraw, if you ever watched any of his college tape, that guy can hit too. And we haven't even barely seen him on the field yet, so he's waiting in the wings, and he'll be ready, I'm sure, if he's called upon.
So let's look at some statistical info on the Lions win over the Jaguars. And as we said at the top of the show, an absolutely historical output by this Lions team on each tier of the ball. A franchise record 645 yards of total offense. And what was great about that, Phil, is as we said, the way they were able to put these drives together, you're not talking a whole bunch of yards that were picked up in empty calories. This is just a team going out there and punching you in the mouth and biting your kneecap off is really what it came down to. 645 yards of offense, 170 given up on defense. That's almost a 500-yard discrepancy between two NFL teams. And if that isn't crazy enough, a franchise record 38 first downs to only 10 given up. So that's a 28 first down discrepancy in an NFL game. They went.
Hold on really quick. That
Yeah.
yardage discrepancy that you were talking about, that is also the biggest difference between two teams since 1979. I heard that one as well.
And again, we're talking NFL teams here. You're not talking about a college game where there can be a clear-cut talent discrepancy between Team A and Team B. This is an NFL game where parity is allegedly at its peak these days, and everyone that you line up against is to be respected. So that's what makes that so unbelievably crazy to me. So you're talking an almost 500-yard discrepancy of yardage. You're plus 28 for the game in first downs. You have a 2-to-1 discrepancy in time of possession. The Lions had the ball for almost 40 minutes compared to just over 20 for Jacksonville. So anytime you have the ball that much, chances are you're doing something right. And last but not least, Phil, the Lions went touchdown on the first 7 times they had the football. The last team that could say that was the 2007 New England Patriots, who took a perfect record all the way to the Super Bowl. It took gum on the helmet of David Tyree to buck the trend on that one, but that is arguably maybe top 3 best offenses of all time. So if you're in the same conversation as the 07 Patriots when it pertains to your offense, holy smokes.
You think these guys are having fun on this team? Like coming in, and not only did you just win a super emotional game on the road on Sunday Night Football, national TV, you got a 1 p.m. game against a team that's not very good. Like, we've seen teams in the past, whether they're here or across the league, take teams for granted. You let a team hang around, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You lose it. And there's just no reason. There's no excuse for it. The Lions knew what they had coming in. They were excited to go. Zadarius Smith's bouncing around wearing a Rasheed Wallace jersey coming into Ford Field. I think this team loves playing with each other. I think this team, like, these are teammates, these are friends, these are brothers. Come up with whatever cliche you want. These are guys that have each other's back, want to come up each and every Sunday and just put on a performance to impress their teammates, and do what they can by them. So I think they're having a blast out there. I really do.
It makes you wonder, though, like you kind of have to know in the back of your mind that we kind of got lucky this past year with both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson staying put,
Sure.
you got to
Yeah.
think that the odds of both of them not being in their current post as coordinators is probably like minus 250 at this point. You got to think that both of them are going to be on multiple teams' short lists for head coach. And you could even look at Phipp as a dark horse head coaching candidate at this point here. You could lose all three of your coordinators this offseason. So there is kind of an aura of like, hey, you know what? Let's just burn the boats. Let's just go out and dump truck everybody, and let's make this all about us, and whatever happens after this season happens. But we're not going to go down without a good, heavy fight, as we saw as recently as a week ago.
Blaze of glory. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that is something the Lions special teams unit is elite, so you obviously had the Khalif Raymond breakout game and the game that where they basically, served up the Titans on a silver platter, for drive after drive after drive. Not to get too far into it, but yeah, if you're the New Orleans Saints, you just have to wonder, like, Aaron Glenn's got to be the no-brainer, like, first person they're contacting if they haven't, already reached out to his agent, about what that would look like.
I just hope
So
that it's not a complete switcheroo where Campbell then brings in like Dennis Allen as the defensive coordinator. That would kind of be that kind of be a hard pill to swallow.
no. In fact, I'd rather take Eberflus because he's going to get fired, and I have a feeling once they make that change and they go get someone to run their team, like, we'll need someone that knows their tendencies a little bit better. So,
Eberflus
uh,
knows where the bodies are buried over in the Windy City. That's for sure.
is that a Capone reference right there? Love it. Yeah.
So as we said, Jared Goff, 24 out of 29, 412 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no mistakes, no sacks, a perfect passer rating if that's your thing. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, once again, each get a rushing touchdown. The Lions do not lose when they both get into the scoring action, so it was real nice to see both of them. Jared Goff, 4 carries for 21 yards. They didn't make it sound like that was a career high, but that's the most rushing yards I've ever seen out of the guy. That's a 5.8 average
Oh man.
for Jared Goff. How crazy is that? St. Brown, 11 catches on 11 targets. So once again, the Goff to St. Brown connection is bearing fruit left and right. 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jameson Williams, 4 catches, 124 yards and a touchdown. So again, you're getting your receivers involved. You're getting your running backs involved. The defenders were eating all game long. You kept him out of the end zone. You kept Mac Jones kind of running for his life, and nobody was home, and everybody was well covered, and they couldn't get anything going. And that's how you get to 52-6. And to cap it all off, you can pretty much give Jack Fox the day off because he didn't go out to punt once.
Yeah, nice afternoon, and he's getting paid to be part of the team. On a day like today, we kid, but I will say this though, having a guy like Fox in the game last Sunday really truly makes all the difference in the world because we talk about this Lions offense at length. We already have in this podcast. If we do have one of these days where it's off and we can't get these drives going, just having him have the ability to go ahead and pin these teams back helps the defense even more, especially when we're going to be down a couple pieces here, moving forward. So, again, totally fine with him resting up. And yeah, if you don't have any reason to use your punter, don't use him.
You didn't need Jake Bates a whole lot either. He was just kicking extra points with the exception of the
Yeah.
154-yard field goal. So, yeah, so you can add another 50-plus yard field goal to Jake Bates' resume. And let's say, hey, while we're at it, let's give Hogan Hatton, the long snapper, his flowers too. I mean, it's a team effort. It seems every week you go out there, and if one unit is not quite up to the task, everybody else is there to pick up the slack.
Without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's take a look at the upcoming opponent for the Lions, and it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. So Lions at the Colts Sunday at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Oddly enough, the Lions won their only other game in Lucas Oil Stadium, and that was the opening week of the 2016 season. So that would have been the final year under Jim Caldwell, if my memory serves me right. So that was
Yeah.
a 39-35 shootout that the Lions took over the Colts. That was back when Andrew Luck was still the quarterback. So things have changed for Indianapolis quite a bit. They'll be heading into the game with a 5-6 record. And we didn't know exactly what we were going to get out of this matchup because they've been doing the two quarterback thing with young
Yeah.
phenom Anthony Richardson, who has about a high of a ceiling. It's just about sky's the limit for that kid. The problem is that he's still prone to mistakes. I don't know how coachable he is necessarily. He's kind of a loose cannon, will kind of go and do whatever the heck he wants and is prone to mistakes and critical situations. And they also used Joe Flacco, the longtime veteran system quarterback, game manager, whatever you want to call him. He's won a Super Bowl, so this guy has experience. He knows how to win games in this league. Just this past week, Phil, they announced that it's going to be Anthony Richardson the rest of the way, win, lose, or draw. We're going to see what we got in this guy before we start making decisions that are going to impact the direction of the franchise long term. So we will see Anthony Richardson for the Colts next week. And this goes back to a point I made a few minutes ago of how I think we're going to feel the effects of Anzalone being out of the lineup right off the cuff because we know that Richardson is about as adept at making plays with his feet and extending plays just about as well as any young quarterback in this league. They
Yeah.
have Jonathan Taylor, who's about as trusty and dependable of a running back as any other team has in the NFL. And if there's one thing that Anzalone does really well, it is helping that second level prevent any big run plays from breaking through. And I think if there's a team that we need to be concerned about running the ball and having success, regardless of what their 5-6 record shows, it's Indianapolis. So that's a piece right off the jump, Phil, that I think the Lions are going to wish they had right up the middle of that second level.
So they're a team, I think, and we've already seen the AFC South, except for them to this point. I think the Texans, we know, are a couple of steps ahead of these other teams. But make no mistake about it, the Colts, I think, are better than the Jags and the Titans by a pretty considerable margin, I think. Just as far as some of the guys that they have on their team are vets. They shown to be productive NFL players. Things just haven't really gone great for this franchise post Andrew Luck, and I think there's still kind of snake bitten a little bit by that. But with Richardson, it's very hit or miss. Quite frankly, you don't know if you're getting C.J. Stroud or you're getting Jamarcus Russell. Each time he's going back there on a pass, and I say that because both of those guys have a cannon, but one is accurate and one is not, and he needs a lot of fine tuning. But it's his legs too, and yeah, he can move the ball. That is something that we'll have to contend. Obviously, we got a pretty good run defense, but again, not having Anzalone out there, that is going to make things considerably more challenging. Jack Campbell, spotlight's on you. I think this is going to be a great opportunity to kind of step up and take on a heftier load here, and that's going to have to do with slowing down the run game next week.
Richardson in his game over the weekend against the New York Jets on the road threw for a season high 272 yards with a touchdown pass. Did not throw any interceptions. And I know Richardson, in just the right situation, can be prone to throwing interceptions and making mistakes. Did
Yeah.
not make any of those. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns. So Anthony Richardson has the potential to be a problem. So it just depends on what's between the ears for that young man and what the Lions are going to be able to bring on defense. We talked about Jonathan Taylor. He's a guy who you can feed for 20, 25, 30 carries in a game to really grind out some drives. You've got young receivers like Josh Downs and guys like A.D. Mitchell, the rookie out of Texas, that can make plays through the air. So the Lions are going to have their hands full. You've got Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator in Indianapolis, so I feel like he's been there ever since he got canned from the
Yeah.
Jacksonville head coaching position. So that's a defensive unit that really hasn't changed much. And the way the Colts have played as a team, they're not a team that's on national TV as much as they used to ever since the days of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck have kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. But every game they've played in this season, again, they're 5-6 going into the game against the Lions, but every one of their games, start to finish, has been decided by 10 points or less.
Yeah.
They've never won a game by more than 6, but they've never lost a game by more than 10. So just the law of averages shows you that on the road, I think this game might be a lot closer than what Lions fans are giving it credit for.
Well, and here's the thing too. I think it can be a little misleading not having, the Thanksgiving Day game against Chicago, against Green Bay the following week, kind of going into the stretch against the division. Final game against the AFC South. You just absolutely truck, steamrolled, demolished the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. But make no mistake about it, Anthony Richardson wants to be a starter in the NFL. And I think going into New Jersey and having 272 yards and a touchdown against a pretty good Jets defense,
And
that says
a
something.
gotta have it spot because it was in the final
Yeah,
2 minutes
yeah,
on the road.
yeah, yeah.
That's a grow up kind of moment right there.
It is, and again, the Lions coming in, that's going to be a big moment for this team. They're going to be fired up. So, do they have the talent of the Texans? No. Are they as bad as the Titans and the Jaguars? No. So, they're kind of a team in this little middle ground, but they have plenty of talent to make life difficult for the Lions if you overlook them. So, listen, I trust this coaching staff is going to get this team ready to go and fired up. And just know, listen, we've won now, what, 8 in a row? Let's go get a double-digit win. Let's go be 10-1. You have to do that by taking care of business in Indy next Sunday.
And I know we mentioned it a week ago with Houston kind of being labeled as a letdown spot that just kind of naturally presents itself on an NFL schedule. And you have the game on the road against the Colts. And then after that, you've got the Thanksgiving game against the Bears. You've got the Thursday night primetime national TV game against the Packers. And then America's game of the week after that at home against the Buffalo Bills. So it almost looks just to the naked eye, Phil, that just a random game on the road in the 1 o'clock time slot at the Indianapolis Colts kind of has letdown spot written all over it. And the Lions are overdue for a stinker at this point. So it's going to take a lot of discipline, I think, to come away with a victory out of Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. You say the stinker, though. You know what? If this team is as good as we think they are, not saying they won't have another loss along the way, is it possible that that Sunday night game against the Texans was the stinker and they just overcame it and went through adversity and did what they could? Because I can see it that way too,
Yeah.
for 5 interceptions and stuff. But hey, listen, we're going to get the Colts very best shot. They're going to start to feel a little bit better about themselves and confident picking it up. And again, a very good Jets defense. Make no mistake, I think that offense is a little snake bitten with Rodgers and everything. Make what you will of that, what you will. But this will be a tough game Sunday.
So even if there's a loss to be had against the Indianapolis Colts, we know how the Lions are rock solid after a loss. So if anything else, that means they'll be ready to kill somebody against the Chicago Bears on Thanksgiving. So
Well,
yeah, I guess it's a win-win however you look at it.
I think that's also the next big thing too, because for me, last season there were 3 defining losses. It was the Ravens, it was the Packers, and obviously it was the 49ers. And the Packers is the one that I kind of forget about maybe because it was Thanksgiving and I just felt like as the game was slipping away, I was still watching, but I'm like, I'm gonna go grab some more food to just cool down a little bit here. Um, but we're due to have a win. Also, quick shout out. The other Thanksgiving Day games absolutely stink. After the Lions, you get the Cowboys and the Giants. No, thank you. No, thank you. And I think the other one is Packers Dolphins, which, at least from the Lions standpoint, watching the Packers would be interesting. But
Go Dolphins.
um, go Dolphins. Yeah.
But let's not forget, Phil, that the Lions have officially named the halftime entertainment for the Thanksgiving game. And I think it's what, Uchi Kabuchi or something like that. What's his name? The
Shabuzi?
the 20-year remake of Buddy in a Club Getting Tipsy.
But with some country twang on it. It's Shabuzi.
Yeah, it's a song that everybody wanted but didn't really want. Well, I don't know. So there's that. We got that to look forward to before our tryptophan-inducing meal coma.
I just wish we would have had Jaquan, the original Tipsy.
What
Yeah,
if he came out there,
man.
Phil, like halfway through that
Oh
song,
man,
and they did just like a
it's his
mashup
moment.
right there in the middle of Ford Field? Could you
It,
imagine?
oh, and people are like, "Wait, who's that guy?"
Yeah.
And they're like, Jaquan on the graphic, and they're like, "Oh man, all right, okay, all right, there he is,
All these
there he is."
millennials and Gen
You know,
Z bandwagon fans that are in attendance at Ford Field are going to be about mind blown as it gets.
and then I'll see Jaquan, and then I'll just be like, "Oh, there's Jaquan. Where is Akon?" Now we're talking.
Oh,
Now we're cooking on an idea. If you can bring back Akon, we're gonna be good.
maybe we'll try that next Thanksgiving.
There you go.
You're listening to this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar and Phil Byrne along with you. Lions 52-6 winners over the Jacksonville Jaguars to improve to 9-1 on the season. Their best start through 10 games since 1934. Winning streak of 8 games at this point. Their longest win streak in a season, a single season since 1934. So what's that, 90 years? I don't think anybody listening to this podcast was alive when any of those things took place.
Hey, you know what? If you are and you're listening to this, let us know. We'd love to have you on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, we do, of course, certainly appreciate the listeners, young and old, to this podcast. And I can't speak for you, Phil, but I'm having so much fun with this team
yeah.
that any opportunity I get to go and watch highlights or locker room content or practice write-ups or anything over the course of the week, I'm into it. And of course, what we're able to do on this podcast is a great way to release some of that excitement out as well. But we're just absolutely thrilled that those of you that are along for the ride on Kneecaps for Breakfast with us, boy, what a great time it is to be a Lions fan.
It truly is. And, I feel like I say this every single week, but just appreciate this team for what it is. They have some great characters and personalities and players. And it's always crazy to me, like being at this game and seeing a team that, whether it's in the actual team store or like the little kind of team shop setups that they have around the concourse, I think I counted about 9 different players that have Lions jerseys available for sale right now, which is amazing. And of course, we just redid the jerseys, this past year. And yet, a guy who was in the row beneath, or the row in front of us, on the end, Joey Harrington jersey. Uh, why?
Out of
I
any
think,
jersey you could possibly wear
yeah,
to a Lions game in 2024.
hey, plenty of Stafford, plenty of Calvin Johnson. Even once in a while, you'll see like a Reggie Bush jersey or a Sue jersey. Hey, something from 10 years ago or whatever. Hey, you know what? That's totally fine. Joey Harrington was picked in what, 2003 by this franchise, and I think was here for 3 years. Didn't
Wasn't
really
any
do
good.
anything particularly memorable. Joey checked down, and yet, you know what? You've decided, I don't know. I'm going to go to a Lions game and probably spend more money on the ticket than the jersey is worth. But I'm not going to go get a new jersey. Like, listen, you go be yourself, and that's great. But I'm just going to tell you, Lions have had better players since Joey Harrington. If you're going to wear a jersey, go get someone else.
I was chatting with an old friend of ours from years and years back, Mr. Michael Stark, yeah, over the weekend about Lions jerseys and all this. And we kind of both stopped and paused that, like, wow, there are a lot of different players that we would love
Yeah.
to have their jersey. Spin the wheel, and whatever it lands on is the jersey that I'm given for a Christmas gift or what have you. Sure, I'd be fine with that. There's just so many likable guys on this roster that I think most Lions fans would proudly take any of their jerseys and wear them proudly.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And then the fun part is, ooh, do you want a blue one? Do you want a white one? Do you want a black one? So that's the other fun part too. You know, but anyways, just food for thought. Something I noticed in the days game. Of course, you always get the weird customized
Oh
ones
yeah.
too. Which are their last names, or I think my favorite one is if someone does a Bud Light promotional one, the jersey on the last name just says Bud Light. You just walking around Ford Field with the jersey it's like 50 Bud Light.
Although nothing will
You know,
ever top if you were to go to a random Carolina Panthers game and you see a "He Hate Me" jersey floating around. I think that will beat anything else anybody else
there you
can come
go.
up with.
There you go. Yep, for sure.
So let's take a look at some action around the NFC North. It was a divisional matchup between the Packers and the Bears at Soldier Field. And it was a back and forth kind of game where the Packers led for a little bit and the Bears led for a little bit, and the Packers took it over, and DeAndre Swift got a go ahead score in the fourth quarter, and Green Bay took the lead late. And in a 20-19 game, Chicago gets in the field goal range, lines up for a field goal. The Packers block it, and that's the end of it. So Chicago, who had already fired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron early in the week, which in our offseason preview episodes, Phil, you and I kind of both were in agreement that was kind of a bizarre fit based on what the Bears, from a personnel and scheme standpoint, were trying to set themselves up to do. And they didn't even give it a whole season to see it all the way through. They
Yeah.
let Waldron go. They promoted passing game coordinator Thomas Brown, who I believe called plays for the Carolina Panthers last year, whatever that's worth. Dealing with Bryce Young and his, at the time, rookie struggles. Maybe they think that he has the elixir to get through to Caleb Williams and some of his rookie struggles. I don't know. But
Yeah.
in any case, the Packers improved to 7-3. The Bears dropped to 4-6, and in a highly competitive division as this NFC North is, probably all but eliminated themselves from contention as far as winning the division goes in the NFC North.
Yeah, you got to imagine they're out of it, and I gotta think, so we had the Seahawks beat the 49ers, so that's
They're
kind
both
of
5-5.
that's kind of keeping them around, I guess, a little bit for a playoff spot. But over the next 2 weeks, if they keep that win mark at 4, I think it is going to formally, maybe not officially, but pretty much formally get rid of them from any sort of postseason spot.
And everything was fully set up for it up until that Hail Mary play. We mentioned it last episode, and ever since that Hail Mary play, things have just gone from
Yeah.
bad to worse. It's funny how you can point to specific moments in time as things kind of take a hard left, but that's how it's been with the Bears franchise. And the Vikings were on the road against the Tennessee Titans. They knocked off Tennessee 23-13 down in Nashville. Now, the Vikings are only one game back of the Lions from a win-loss standpoint, the Lions do currently hold the tiebreaker, so it's a little bit more than just the one game in the standings. However, the Vikings, after losing to the Lions and then going and losing to the Rams on Thursday Night Football, have rattled off 3 wins to kind of get back in the swing of things. However, they went on 3/4 of the full tour of the AFC South. They hosted the Colts on Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago and won at Jacksonville and at Tennessee. So not the greatest of competition. Minnesota was getting wins over. A win's a win in this league, and you don't apologize for it, but it may make people wonder what is the Minnesota Vikings actually. We didn't really get a good sense of that just based on competition over the last 3 games, but nonetheless, for the
Mhm.
Vikings in the standings, that is still a game back of the Lions.
Yeah, still a game back. A lot to be played for, and then of course we have to wait forever to see them again. To have a game against them. They are the final game of the regular season at Ford Field, so um, it could very well be decided before that game. You know, um, where our position is, not only in the division but also in the greater NFC as well.
And not to be forgotten about or ignored, it was another matchup between the Chiefs and the Bills. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, the two quarterbacks, that is kind of evolving into the next great rivalry between quarterbacks. The Tom Brady and Peyton Manning thing was kind of the rivalry that everybody was talking about for a long, long time. And since those guys have both since retired, now you're kind of getting Mahomes and Allen as kind of that big individual matchup that everybody is watching. And it was the Bills winning 30-21 over the Chiefs, handed Kansas City their first loss. So the Lions are now tied atop the NFL with a NFL best 9-1 record that they're sharing with the Chiefs. And it's a situation where Josh Allen has been taking care of business against the Chiefs in the regular season, but ultimately it's been Mahomes that's gotten the last laugh in all of their playoff showdowns. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I have every reason in my mind to believe that these two will probably wind up facing off against each other in the postseason.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a couple other teams that I think are going to be around that discussion point, but um, this is the game that shifted the odds. As I don't think we've announced it so far on here. You go into any sportsbook app right now, the Lions, Vince, what is this world we're living in? Are the proverbial going into Week 12 are the odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl? We have now overtaken the Chiefs now that they have gotten their first loss, and that's a weird world to be living in. But here we are, and of course that's week to week. If we were to lose against Indianapolis, you better believe we would not be the odds-on favorite as well. But yeah, we overtook the Chiefs after that loss.
But look at how the Lions have won their games, and look at how the Chiefs have won their games. The Lions have been going out and dump
Yeah,
trucking people and beating people. Even in
yeah,
the Texans game, they went out there and beat them. That's what they had to do. They had to go out there
yeah,
and take the game from them. There was no luck factor involved one bit, except maybe Fairbairn missing that field goal. But you can't expect guys to go out there and routinely make 56-yard field goals. So there's no luck involved. It seems like the Chiefs have been going out there and
yeah.
surviving a lot of these games. So how the Lions got to 9-1 and how the Chiefs got to 9-1 isn't really one and the same. So that's how I can definitely see that, the odds on favorite to win the Super Bowl is the way it is.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense to me too.
So let's do some game picks looking ahead to next week, Phil. We'll open this up with our Thursday night football matchup, a highly anticipated matchup within the AFC North. The Pittsburgh Steelers lay in 4.5 as they travel to the Mistake by the Lake to take on the Cleveland Browns. I know you've been waiting all week for Thursday night, Phil. So Steelers, Browns, who you like in this one?
Um, Very short story before I get into it. So I'm fortunate that I have folks come into my training classes from all over the country in my real job that I do each week.
You mean you're not
And
just a podcast host?
Hey, well, you know what? This is the full-time gig, right? No, not not at all. But you know, and I always tell them my story about being a Lions fan and this, that, and the other thing. It's all about the podcast, of course. And he told me he's from Cleveland, huge Browns fan, and he's just had it. He's had it, and he's like, I never thought it would come to this. I never thought I'd be a bandwagon fan, but he's like, I believe in Detroit. It's a close enough city, and I know there's the weird Michigan Ohio dynamic, but he's like, I'm going in. He's like, I'm gonna be a Lions fan. He's like, what do I need to know? How do I do it? And I'm like, okay, well,
Welcome
whatever.
aboard.
Welcome aboard. Weird that it's happening from someone who is from our arch nemesis state, but certainly. Long story short, give me the Steelers. I think this Browns ship has sunken, and I think Stefanski's still a good coach, and they have some good pieces, but you just can't get past how poorly this Deshaun Watson thing was done. And I think from a management and ownership standpoint, I think they leave a lot to be desired. Steelers are the model of consistency right now, and I think they're going to move it forward, even if I have question marks on Russell Wilson. But give me the Steelers.
I'm with you. I think the Steelers, oddly enough, have figured some things out on offense ever since they made the move to make Russell Wilson the starter at quarterback. Jameis Winston had a nice outing against his former team against the New Orleans Saints over the weekend, but I don't think it'll be nearly enough Steelers to lay the points.
Yeah.
Divisional matchup in the NFC North of relevance between the Minnesota Vikings laying 3.5 as they travel to Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears, a place where the Bears just could not lose for quite some time. Now they've dropped 2 games in a row at Soldier Field. Minnesota, as we said, they've been exclusively playing AFC South teams all month of December, so it'll be back to the NFC test for them. The Bears is kind of if it wasn't a must win already, it's a must win now, but it's the Vikings laying 3.5. Who you got?
Had the had the Bears held on today, I would have felt better about picking them, but I think this is an easy slam dunk for the Vikings to go in there, and I think the Bears are a broken team at this point.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. Even though Minnesota, an indoors team, they're going to be playing outdoors in the elements. I think you're going to be looking at temperatures right around 40 degrees at kickoff for the Vikings and Bears game. I don't think it matters. I think it's going to be an ugly game, but Chicago hasn't shown me that they can do enough on offense to be able to be the aggressor. I'm going to take a flyer and go with Minnesota to lay the 3.5 on the road. Another game of relevance in the NFC. It's going to be America's Game of the Week on Fox. The San Francisco 49ers, fresh off a tough loss to the Seattle Seahawks at home, heading to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers. The 49ers are catching 1.5 from the Packers, but we don't know what the status of Nick Bosa is going to be. He wound up leaving the game about halfway through, did not return, so we don't know what the defensive front will look like for the 49ers. San Francisco plus 1.5 at Green Bay, Phil.
So, I think just what we have seen everything this year, just a gut feeling. I think one way or the other, we see the 49ers in the postseason. So they're not exactly trending in the right mindset or anything, but I think this is a game that they're going to win outright in Green Bay, and I think it's going to give them a little bit of momentum for a second half boost moving into the postseason a little bit, even if they don't have Bosa. Packers, something's just still a little off with this team. Even if they are at home for this one, I'll take San Francisco.
Wow, I thought, hey, this might be the one game where you and I are on opposite sides and we can both give our nice
Yeah,
nuanced takes and everything like that. I was going to take San Francisco, and well, it looks like Phil's on the bandwagon for San Francisco as well. But I'm with you, Phil. I think that San Francisco is not going to sit here this late in the season as we're coming up on the final couple of weeks in November. I don't think they're just going to sit there and just continue to get punched in the mouth and wind
yeah.
up with a losing record heading into December. I think there's too much talent on that roster. I think Kyle Shanahan is still too good of a offensive mind to just come up short in all these games. I do think, Phil, that something isn't quite right in Green Bay. They have been able to, kind of like Minnesota, survive some games over the last few weeks. But I think San Francisco is going to go on the road and get the job done because they know that time is running out. And if they have any real hopes of taking care of business and getting to the playoffs, they got to do it because they still got Arizona to contend with. They still have Seattle, who's at 5-5, tied with them. They have the Rams, who are tied with them at 5-5. They cannot afford to fall back into the pack because once you kind of fall behind, you're done. So give me the 49ers to get this one on the road outright. Speaking of the aforementioned Arizona Cardinals and Seattle Seahawks, they're our final game in the pick segment. Arizona catching a 1.5 as they travel to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seahawks. Cardinals on the bye week this past week. Seattle, big win against the 49ers in Santa Clara. Who are you liking this one, Phil?
I'll go Seahawks. I think they'll ride that momentum a little bit. I think they still have a better roster than the Cardinals, even if Arizona has the better record. Um, I don't know. I don't know how this division is going to end up, but certainly from a win-loss standpoint, probably won't be the best record in football. But it's going to be damn near entertaining to see how these four teams, what the final pecking order is. So I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one.
I'm going to go Cardinals. I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen from Kyler Murray this year. He's definitely stepped up and shown that he can be a leader of an offense. Have I seen it from Marvin Harrison Jr. as kind of like that second coming of a big time playmaker? No, I haven't. But I think the Cardinals as a franchise should be very proud of what they've seen out of Kyler Murray this year. They've already
Yeah.
shown they can go on the road, win at San Francisco, a tough place to win games. Seattle has kind of limped through. They're 5-5, and they started out 3-0. Then they lost a bunch,
Yeah.
and they lost DK Metcalf for a couple games. Got him back against San Francisco, but from a game control standpoint, I'm not seeing it from Seattle. Arizona has impressed a lot of people. They kind of have that house money thing going, not completely unlike what we saw from the Lions a couple of years ago, how they're on people's schedules. You don't know if they're getting the other team's best effort just yet, and they come out of nowhere and pop you. So I'm going to take the Cardinals to do just that in Seattle. Phil, I'm going to leave you with this last little tidbit here. So the first two home games that the Lions played in the friendly confines of Ford Field, they averaged 21 points a game against the likes of the LA Rams and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They split those two games. Since then, they have come back to drop 42 on the Seahawks, 52 on the Titans, and 52 on the Jaguars. That is a lot of offense on the fast track. And knowing that we have four more opportunities at Ford Field, plus the game at Indianapolis, which will be indoors unless they randomly decide to open up the roof on a 40-degree day, which I highly doubt. This offense is set up to continue to do some great things and a team that's still in line to go out there and stack some wins.
Absolutely. And if Chicago loses to Minnesota this upcoming week and maybe a coaching change is made, the Lions know how important this Thanksgiving Day game is to its fan base, to the city of Detroit, to Michigan. Obviously, as we have climbed up to this elite level of the NFL, I think it is just showing even more important to win and win in dominant fashion at home. And my God, I don't know what the line is going to be going into it if this happens, but if the Bears lose again against the Vikings, give me the Lions over in that game. You could put that thing at 20, and I think I would still take the over. I think that game is going to be an absolute slaughter of the Bears on Thanksgiving.
Let's get to the Colts game first. Let's hope that we get a win over
For sure.
Indianapolis first, and then we'll start worrying about Thanksgiving. But I'm with you,
Absolutely.
Phil. All hands on deck waiting for what's going to happen in the Thanksgiving Day game because we know that we are overdue for a good
Yep.
performance on Thanksgiving. But Before we get to Thanksgiving, we'll have the breakdown of the Lions and the Colts next week on our next episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. As much as we would love to sit around and talk more Lions, we are out of time. But again, tune in next week as we break down Lions over the Colts before the aforementioned Thanksgiving game against the Bears. For Bill Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning, go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.